Betsy Rader, and I am a vice president of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. I am so pleased to welcome all of you today to Legal Aid's annual report to the community. I also have the great honor and pleasure to introduce the 56th mayor of the city of Cleveland, Mayor Frank G. Jackson. Mayor Jackson has said, quote, "The measure of a great city is how it provides for and how it treats the least among us." What more fitting way to begin this afternoon? I am pleased to present the Honorable Frank G. Jackson.
Good afternoon. And how are you this afternoon? Good, good. You know, I want to congratulate Legal Aid for 111 years and welcome everyone to this year's luncheon. And I want to also congratulate all of the people who will be recognized this afternoon for all the things that they've done for Cleveland and for the Legal Aid Society. But most of all, I want to thank Legal Aid. And I want to thank them because 111 years is a long time, and longevity is a very important thing. But what matters most is what do you do in that time? And Legal Aid has done a lot. They have allowed for people who would not receive the kind of representation that because they couldn't afford it, they allowed them to receive that type of representation. I can remember when I was in city council before there were anti-predatory lending policies that we were fighting against the practice of predatory lending. And it was Legal Aid who came to city council and worked with me for about a year so that we could develop legislation that would protect the people of Cleveland from predatory lending. I can remember there are times when we were needed help, and there were people who I knew needed some legal advice, but they had nowhere to go. I always knew that I could call Legal Aid and recommend them to Legal Aid, and they would get the quality representation that Legal Aid provides. So again, I want to congratulate them on 111 years, but most of all, I want to thank them for who they are and what they are for the city of Cleveland. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Jackson. We are so pleased you took the time to be with us today. Hello and welcome. My name is Vanetta Jameson, and I am the president of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. And we are so pleased to have you with us today for our annual meeting.
And I am Colleen Cotter, the executive director of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. It's always wonderful to see so many of our friends at this annual tradition. Your joining us speaks to your and our community's commitment to secure justice for our fellow Clevelanders who are vulnerable and struggle with low incomes. And by the way, isn't it awesome to celebrate today in this brand new Hilton downtown Cleveland? A fitting symbol of Cleveland's championship spirit. We call these luncheons our, quote, annual report to the community. But this get-together always feels as festive as a reunion of good friends. And that is just the way it should be. Many of us here from nonprofits, foundations, schools, healthcare providers, law firms, as well as individuals, work together to secure justice for tens of thousands of people whose low income too often means no justice, no fair shake, in or out of the halls of justice. Believe it or not, as the mayor mentioned, this gathering marks Legal Aid's 111th year. We began serving the poor and vulnerable in 1905 out of the old Williamson Building on Public Square. Cleveland was where the action was, doubling in size every 20 years. Then, as now, legal aid was in this dynamic community's mix, changing lives in what was then called the best governed city in America. That was 1905, the beginning of a decade when the city's great progressive institutions would arise: the orchestra, the art museum, the Playhouse, United Way, the City Club, the Music School Settlement, the Cleveland Foundation, and the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, the 5th oldest in the nation. A century plus later, we are thriving still.
So today, we want to bring you up to date on the current status of our pursuit of justice. We will report on the year past, introduce you to our vital work removing barriers to employment. We will also recognize our staff and volunteers for their outstanding work, award our 2nd annual Louis Stokes Paragon Award to Stephen Dettelbach, the former United States Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio, and a great friend of legal aid. And, as always, we will make sure you can resume your own battles against injustice about 1 o'clock.
But first, I would like to recognize Vanetta and all of her colleagues on the Legal Aid Board of Directors and committees. We appreciate their dedication to our work and mission. Would members of Legal Aid's board and board committees please stand to be recognized?
Thank you. And speaking of our board of directors, 3 members of our board end their terms after 6 years of exemplary service. We will miss them, but we know they will continue to stay engaged with legal aid because while their board terms have ended, their commitment to legal aid has not. Please join me in congratulating Frank DeSantis, John Lewis, and Rick Petrulis.
Yes, and my thanks too to Frank, John, and Rick. Now let me tell you more about Vanetta and the special role that she and 7 others of our board members play. They are the Legal Aid Board's community representatives, board members who qualify as legal aid clients. Vanetta is the first community representative to rise to be president of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. Our Code of Regulations and our major federal funder, the Legal Services Corporation, require that 1/3 of our board be representative of the communities we serve. As a community representative, Vanetta and her colleagues have 2 invaluable perspectives. One, the perspective of the communities they live in, which they can help us better understand. And 2, the perspective of legal aid, so they can be our advocates and educators in neighborhoods, to neighbors who don't know they can get legal help, don't know how to connect, or maybe don't even trust a place like legal aid.
I can share the concerns of my neighbors with legal aid, and I can confirm that or question whether legal aid is on target with what we think they should be doing. At Legal Aid, our board and staff, whatever their backgrounds, know that the ravages of poverty are very real, and we are determined to make lives better. But community representatives know these struggles firsthand. For example, we have community representatives who have been homeless and know that life, who have had children struggling to get the services the law entitles them to, but the school turned a deaf ear. We have a community representative now who knows how to deal with the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority because she lives in public housing and advocates for her fellow residents. We also have a community representative who is a veteran and works with veterans and knows both the scars from and bonds of military service. Because I am a board member who lives in both these worlds, the world of our clients and the decision-making body of this great organization, I can help shape legal aid. And because of my experience, my voice is heard.
Vanetta and the other community representatives underscore a quality about legal aid of which we are immensely proud: our deep and vital connections with our community. We could not get our work done as effectively as we do without our community representatives. And while we are on the subject, in your own way, all of you here today are also community representatives for legal aid. You have expertise we don't. You spot problems and solutions we don't see, just as we spot problems and solutions you don't see. As does Vanetta, you connect. You bond us with your communities, be they residential or professional, and those bonds work. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you for your support and your partnership. Give yourselves a hand. In this connected community, our pro bono volunteers are a special category for us. In the middle spread of your program, we highlight more than 125 attorneys who have participated in 5 or more cases or activity or volunteered 100 or more hours with legal aid. And today, we want to honor the efforts of 8 very special volunteers with 3 volunteer awards. Would the award recipients please stand when you hear your name? And please hold your applause until we've introduced all of these award winners. First, we present the Legacy of Justice Award for significant pro bono efforts in terms of tenure and impact. The 2016 honorees are the Northeast Ohio chapter of the Association of Corporate Counsel, a committed partner since the inception of our neighborhood advice clinics. They are a model of concerned corporate citizenship. And to John Kern, who almost 15 years ago, having retired from corporate practice, began to volunteer every week at Legal Aid. In the last 18 months alone, John has volunteered 470 hours.
Our second award, the Access to Justice Award, recognizes significant contributions advancing legal aid's mission through pro bono commitment. In 2016, the awardees are Patrick McGraw, who continues to use his legal talents in his retirement. In the past 18 months, Pat volunteered 125 hours and staffed 30 advice clinics. And Elizabeth Hendricks, who in 2016 contributed 277 pro bono hours as an in-house volunteer working with Legal Aid's public benefits team.
And finally, the Community Impact Award honors outstanding participation ensuring success. The 2016 honorees are the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association's Women in Law section, which staffs monthly advice clinics at a shelter for homeless women and children. J. Luke Lindberg and Ryan Ellis, whose steadfast commitment to the new Ashtabula County Community Outreach Clinic has brought much-needed outreach to an underserved population. And the Lorain County Bar Association, whose partnership has ensured that Legal Aid's new Lorain County Community Outreach Clinic has been a success, recruiting its members to become engaged in legal aid. If all of the award winners will now again please stand so we can recognize you. Congratulations.
As we say in this year's annual report, we are all part of a vital, engaged community seeking justice. This phrase, community seeking justice, pinpoints our 2 essential objectives. These define who we are and what we do: secure justice and build communities. I can go further. Justice and community may also define the kind of society the kind of America we want. On the subject of justice, here's another legal aid tradition along with these luncheons. As some of you might recognize, a maxim on justice from a prominent figure is always our theme here. We have quoted Martin Luther King Jr., Buddha, Eleanor Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson, and even Sherlock Holmes.
Just across the street, Alexander Hamilton greets attorneys each day, along with a statue of Thomas Jefferson, on the steps of the Lakeside Courthouse. So it fits tradition to include a quote from one of our nation's founders and America's first Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. Quote, "The first duty of society is justice." But this year, quoting Alexander Hamilton also touches something else about us. As many of you know, Alexander Hamilton is having his own moment as a cultural phenomenon through the Broadway mega-hit musical, Hamilton. It's a show no doubt many of us have heard of, but very few of us have seen. Nevertheless, a Hamilton quote was a natural. And if we can borrow from Secretary Hamilton's writings, maybe we can also borrow a lyric from his show that captures the spirit of legal aid. In the show, the character Hamilton, reveling in the feistiness of the young country on the cusp of liberty, sings that America is, quote, "young, scrappy, and hungry." If I may, I would say the same about legal aid. Not young in age, but young in energy, hope, and spirit. Scrappy, you bet. Hungry, you believe it. Every day, we move the reach of justice forward. That's who we are, young, scrappy, and hungry.
So what kind of year has it been? A good one. We are solidly out of the recession. We definitely turned a corner on funding. We ended last year in the black and are confident we will this year as well. In fact, we should always finish in the black. The recession was an exception in that we had to use our reserves to fill the gap. But now we can go back to using our reserves for improvements and special projects.
On the staff side, we need to pause and celebrate our incredible staff. Would all of my colleagues on the staff of Legal Aid please stand? Come on, stand up, folks, stand up. And stay standing, please, stay standing. Look at this amazing group of people. We have made a point to articulate Legal Aid's values, which are framed on our office walls. These staff members embody those values, especially they inspire dedication, innovation, and excellence. Every day they inspire me. And those of you seated with them today know exactly what I mean. Please join me in thanking them again for their dedication and applauding them for their accomplishments. We take such pride in our staff's work that we have some more awards today to honor some extraordinary staff members. These awards, graciously funded by the Alan Madorsky Memorial Fund, recognize leadership, dedication, and service. We'd appreciate it if you would hold your applause until the end, and honorees, please stand when I call your name. Please join me first in recognizing the Leadership Award winner, Hazel Remich, Supervising Attorney. This honor acknowledges Hazel's outstanding staff leadership, tireless efforts for Legal Aid's clients, and vision for Legal Aid's work. She has made Legal Aid a better organization and a stronger team for justice.
The next award is named in honor of Claude E. Clark, who directed Legal Aid's work for nearly 4 decades. This award recognizes outstanding service, professionalism, and commitment to the Legal Aid Society and its clients. Please congratulate the Claude E. Clark Award winners, Mike Atali, Danielle Godomsky Littleton, Jasmine McCornell, and Kristen Simpson.
And finally, for her outstanding staff leadership, tireless efforts for Legal Aid's clients, and vision for Legal Aid's work throughout her career, I am so proud to present the Lifetime Achievement Award to Anne McGowan Porath.
I never set out to become a legal aid attorney. And then I had the opportunity to receive a fellowship. And I thought, well, this is going to be good. This will, get me started in my legal career. I'll spend 2 years at Legal Aid, and then I'll move on. 35 years later, I'm still there. And I think it is the commitment that I see of all the attorneys at Legal Aid to really helping, to using a law degree in a way that you can improve people's lives. To collaborate with colleagues that are so insightful and so analytical and so smart has made my decision to pursue the legal profession and to stay at Legal Aid so meaningful.
Anne joined Legal Aid in 1982 and has dedicated her career to Legal Aid's mission of high-quality legal services to low-income individuals. Since 2005, she has been the anchor and visionary for a revitalized volunteer lawyers program, which has increased Legal Aid's capacity to serve, bolstered its pro bono support, and heightened its standing in the community. Anne has also managed Legal Aid's intake system, which under her leadership is the respectful and kind voice and face of Legal Aid to our client communities. Her professionalism, creativity, and leadership have promoted the mission of Legal Aid and strengthened the resolve of all she has engaged. Congratulations, Anne. So well deserved.
I cannot help but feel emotion when I see the Legal Aid staff and watch their dedicated work for our client community. Before I was on the board of directors, I was familiar with Legal Aid. Allow me to tell you a brief story. A long time ago, two young girls were the closest of friends. They finished school together, faced the challenges of growing up in poor neighborhoods together, and tried to figure out the world together. Eventually, their paths separated. One went to college, and one got married and had a baby. One day, the friend in college received a call for help. Her married friend was trapped in an abusive relationship, physically, mentally, and verbally abusive, and didn't know what to do. She was living in a trailer, had no money, and didn't know how she could protect herself or her baby. Her college friend said, "You have to get out of that relationship fast," and told her to contact Legal Aid. And she did, and life got better. But fast forward 20 years, the college friend had not finished college, was married, had 5 children, and found herself facing a difficult divorce. She felt lost with nowhere to go. Now it was her friend's turn. Do what you said I should do. Contact Legal Aid. And that's what she did. Legal aid represented her in the divorce and bucked her up when she was despaired. In the face of the divorce, she had gone back to school, but soon found the stress of children, the divorce, and school to be overwhelming. She told her attorney she couldn't do both, school and the divorce. She was going to quit school. The college friend will always remember that moment. Her legal aid attorney looked her directly in the eye and said, "Look, young lady, I'm getting your divorce. You get your education." And I did. Thank you. This year, like every year since 1905, there are thousands of men, women, children, just like my girlfriend and me, whose lives are changed, liberated by legal aid. This last year, 2015, we served 19,673 MEs in 8,126 cases. 69% of our clients were women. 40% of all households included children. 16% of our clients were older adults. 84% of households we helped made less than $25,000 per year. Their troubles ranged from evictions, foreclosures, domestic abuse, to barriers to education, health insurance, and other benefits.
More and more over the last few years, we have seen an increase in the number of working poor.
Many of the clients that we serve encounter barriers for employment, housing, public benefits.
It is a tenuous position for most of our clients. When you have a single-parent household, they're faced with constantly trying to balance. I want to support my family and work, but I also have to be available for any family emergencies.
One day late at work can cost their job. They lose their job, they lose their income. They lose their income, they might end up in the eviction process. And it can snowball from there.
It's sort of like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, only to have it roll back again. It takes very little to disrupt what fragile stability some of the people have in their lives.
We tend not to pay much attention to people who we perceive as being lower income than us. I see it every day when I take the Green Line from Shaker Heights into downtown Cleveland. The people who do not have, who get into that train day in and day out, and they see all these people dress up, going to work, I can't help thinking that they, in their minds, they are like, I wish I would be that person. I wish that I would have a job. I wish I would have those clothes. Whether they're low income or high income, everybody wants to be treated with dignity.
The mission of Cleveland Legal Aid is to treat individuals and family holistically. We're experts in looking at what other resources are available to help. How can we bring this all together so that the end result is the legal issue they came to us about may be resolved, but then also we have added so many other layers of assistance. The end result is so much more positive.
And what we can do to improve lives of individuals. And as we do this, we improve the life of our entire community.
We have a solid record and impressive success rates, but our focus on success can be a bit like the image of Sisyphus in the video you just saw. Last year, we could only help 43% of the people who came to us. And we are not alone. The same is true for legal aid organizations across the country. We just do not have the resources to match the need in our community. 57% of the people asking for our help, we had to turn away. That hurts. Even a good day has a bittersweet edge. Pushing that boulder up the hill, how can we possibly succeed? But we do. Every client story builds upon another. And while we cannot help everyone, last year we helped nearly 20,000 people, pushing those boulders over the hill. And we charge ahead, expanding our reach, pulling together, focusing our resources where we can have the biggest impact. For instance, our work to remove barriers to employment. Being poor is expensive. Those earning under $20,000 a year spend more than half their income on rent. They pay a higher percentage of their income for childcare, groceries, and gas than any of us here do. They also have expenses that most of us here never experience, like the exorbitant fees and interest from payday lenders, and constant late fees as they balance which bill to pay. That doesn't leave much for hope for tomorrow.
For example, look at the legal barriers that the poor face, but others do not, in convincing an employer to hire them. Inaccurate credit reports, lack of stable housing, homelessness, suspended driver's licenses, lack of reliable transportation, domestic violence, child support arrears, to say nothing of the walls that criminal or arrest records present. What can legal aid do? We can get driver's licenses restored, clean up or seal arrest or conviction records, help clear up credit, advocate for child support payments, prevent evictions and foreclosures. The list is long.
In our quest for community and justice, few events cure as many problems of living as getting a job. For example, recent client Barbara Boyd's boss at a home health care agency fired her after 25 years for missing work to go to a funeral. Another consequence of poverty is bosses out of a Dickens novel. Eventually, she got her job back, but only because of legal aid's involvement in her case. In another case, one of our lawyers helped Sergeant Adams, a veteran, get an arrest warrant for drug possession dismissed. This enabled him to get veterans benefits and soon a well-paying job at the VA. And another, Krista Davis, she resigned from her job when she finished school. Her employer not only unlawfully kept her last 2 paychecks, but also prevented her from getting a new child care voucher by making false allegations against her. Ms. Davis's legal aid attorney filed a lawsuit and an administrative appeal to set things right. These are problems that I hope we can safely agree most of us in this room will never face. Yet they are the daily battlefield for the poor. Let me end on a more upbeat note. No matter what else is going on in the world around us, this is a pretty happy time here in Cleveland. In fact, some would say an historically happy time. The Cavs taking the crown, new energy downtown, and the Indians will definitely win it next year. Yes. And the Browns, well, they might have a perfect season. But I'll bet you none of our joy, none of our happiness can come anywhere near the joy felt by Ms. Boyd, Sergeant Adams, and Ms. Davis when they got their jobs back, or their back pay, or saw the road to work cleared before them. This is one way to look at our mission. We bring joy. That's what we do. Thank you.
Now, continuing on the subject of happy events, I would like to introduce longtime legal aid supporter, Mr. Dick Pogue, our first Paragon Award winner last year, for a special announcement. Dick?
Thank you very much. What a wonderful turnout it is here today. It shows a great tribute to the work that Cleveland Legal Aid, under the leadership of Vanetta and Colleen and all the other people on the staff, do. It's just very, very remarkable, very heartwarming. It's a great honor for me to be asked to say a few words here today. It was last year that I was a recipient of the Stokes Paragon Award, and it's particularly gratifying because we have here at table 4 members of Lou Stokes' family. We're glad to see you here today. I'm sure that I was very humbled to receive the award last year, as I'm sure Steve will be in a few moments. The Legal Aid Society of Cleveland is an organization about which I care deeply. It does so much great work. You've heard about some of it here, providing help to people who can't afford the representation they need, helping the undeserved out in the community. You heard these examples today of people who are trying to break out of the cycle of poverty or trying to avoid getting into it. A job loss or a health crisis can quickly become a housing problem. A foreclosure or a health issue or even a domestic violence situation can lead to job loss. So legal aid is really crucial in so many of these cases to prevent the cycle of poverty either from starting or, if it's once in motion, from continuing. And legal aid is not only helping the people that it serves, but it's also really an investment on the part of all of us in the community. So in that vein, I've sort of felt that maybe I should put my money where my mouth is, and I am going to issue a challenge today to all of you in this room. I pledge to match dollar for dollar any gifts which you make to Cleveland Legal Aid between this minute right now and the close of business on December 1. And I've got to put a limit on that, so it's $25,000 for me. But so at your tables, I believe there are some easy cards you can fill out to indicate your pledge. And all you have to do is sign it and pass it back. There are volunteers, I think, that are going to be roaming around the room picking these cards up. Or if you're a texter, which I am not, but you can text the word MATCH, M-A-T-C-H, to this number, 74121, and make your gift right now. Get it behind you. I really hope that this challenge will encourage everyone in the room to help out Cleveland Legal Aid. And I'm told by the staff that if you collectively meet my $25,000 challenge today in full, Legal Aid will be able to fund one full-time attorney on its staff for the full upcoming year. So please help me lighten my wallet. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Karen Giffen, one of the vice presidents of Legal Aid's board. And while thank you, Dick, for that awesome announcement, I think our community is up to that challenge. I certainly hope so. It's my pleasure to present this year's Louis Stokes Paragon Award, which recognizes individuals who, like Congressman Stokes, serve as models of excellence in their pursuit of justice.
I've had a long personal relationship with the Legal Aid Society. Sitting on the board of the Legal Aid Society is an opportunity to help promote the good that society does in our community. They are doing an extraordinary job of providing access to equality under the law. And that, I think, is so important as a lawyer.
And now I have the privilege of introducing Steve Dettelbach, former United States Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio and current partner at Baker Hostetler. You know that Steve is a leader in our community. You may have heard his story about the case he prosecuted in 1995 when he won convictions in what was, at the time, the largest human trafficking case ever brought in the United States. 70 Thai women were imprisoned in a garment factory in California, forced to live and work there against their will. You may also know that while he was the United States Attorney, his office prosecuted those who engaged in predatory lending, leaving in their wake devastated families and neighborhoods. He sought out and developed partnerships with nonprofits and community organizations. He brought indictments and lawsuits when they were appropriate. He brought people together to solve community problems whenever it was possible. He is a true leader of justice. What you might not know is that from his first day as United States Attorney, Steve reached out to Legal Aid to build a partnership. No other United States Attorney had done it before him. He ensured that his team was engaged with the Legal Aid on a variety of issues to support the most vulnerable in our communities, addressing issues of language access, human trafficking, community safety, and consumer scams. He invited Legal Aid to engage in important community conversations. Legal Aid is honored to call Steve our partner and our friend, and we are pleased to present Steve with the 2016 Louis Stokes Paragon Award.
Thanks so much for that really generous introduction, Karen. I really can't tell you how humbling it is to be standing here and getting an award named for a dear friend and a role model of mine, Lou Stokes. I want to thank his family for being here, and from a group as incredible as the Legal Aid Society that Congressman Stokes loved so, so dearly. My mom is here. She was a school teacher who raised me and my brother Eric, two pretty obnoxious teenage boys, while at the same time going to night law school, and I want to thank her. I also grew up in a house with another legal role model, my dad. He is here and is a proud graduate also of night law school at Cleveland State University. thanks Lee, which he went to while he worked a day job and supported a young family. And when he got his law degree, I watched as a young kid as he used it to help people. I saw how he would stay up late at night working on his cases. I remember a case he had for a guy named Stefan Jankowski. And I still remember that name, not because it was in the Supreme Court or in the news, but because my dad talked so much about the case, because it was so important for the family. Mr. Jankowski was a guy who was a working man. He worked a forklift, and the brakes on his forklift failed one day, and he lost his leg. He lost his ability to work into the future. And I remember thinking that my dad was using the law to help that family, to fight for their future, to give them a shot at a good life. And I remember thinking that's what the law was about, and that's what my dad taught me. So thank you. My two kids are here, Allie and David, and your incredible mother, Carol, and I only hope that we can do half as good a job to teach you what really matters in life as our parents taught us, the things that are really worth fighting for. You know, as we heard here today, and as we know, there are a lot of things that are stacked up against people out there getting a fair shake in our community and our country. And you know, sometimes when we look at what's going on, or maybe when we turn on the news, you know, it just might seem like sometimes things are getting gloomier and gloomier, like there's a storm coming. And it might be tempting, Allie and David, to say, and we all are tempted to say at times, you know, what can one person really do about all these problems? And to kind of give in and give up. But I will tell you, Allie and David, that I have absolutely no patience for that answer. Actually, you might think that I just have no patience, period. That's really another story. I have no patience for that answer because the story of our community and our country has always been full of tough times. Real justice never, ever comes easy or cheap. And it only comes when there are people who are willing to stand up and fight, to fight for justice. And as lawyers, to use the law as a way to achieve justice, just like your grandfather did, and just like everybody every day who works at the Legal Aid Society does. There are role models all around us. People in our history, people like Newton Baker, who founded my law firm, Baker Hostetler, who was also, like Mayor Jackson, one of the great progressive mayors of our city. You know, my firm and Baker Hostetler has celebrated that kind of sacrifice. You know, Newton Baker, my firm was founded 100 years ago. He founded the firm, and then within months, he left the firm to serve in Woodrow Wilson's administration because the storm of World War was coming to our country. That kind of public service and sacrifice. And of course, people like Lou Stokes, who, when times got tough, did not even know the meaning of the word quit. Look at Congressman Stokes. He grew up in public housing, defended our nation, and then came back and defended the rights of the people in our nation to vote and to privacy. In all the courts, right here from Cuyahoga County up to the United States Supreme Court. He saw tough times. He saw racism and riots in this city he loves so dearly. He saw a town that was down in its luck, sometimes for decades. And he saw a government, a court system, and a corporate America that too often didn't have time or interest in understanding the challenges and problems facing working people. And in spite of all that, all those storm clouds, Lou Stokes never even thought of giving up. He didn't make excuses. Lou Stokes made progress. Progress in Cleveland and progress in our nation as a leader in Congress. And he used the law and then made the law to help real people. That's what legal aid does. That's what the Legal Aid Society did for people like William Skinner. Mr. Skinner was a veteran, and he'd been out of work since 2009 because he had double hip replacement. You know, Mr. Skinner was getting monthly benefits from the VA until one day in 2014, the payments just stopped. And the VA told Mr. Skinner that they actually believed that he was self-employed and owned some property, and that his pension had actually been overpaid for 6 years. And guess what? The reason they were cutting him off is because actually Mr. Skinner owed the VA money. And they had decided on their own that they were going to cut his benefits so that they could repay themselves. So here you have Mr. Skinner, a man who courageously served and protected our country, a man who's terrified now here at home, terrified of a system that seems uncaring and complex and unfair. And then Mr. Skinner went to the Legal Aid Society. And together, he and his legal aid attorney submitted the required reports to the VA and had a hearing. And they showed the VA that he didn't have income for the years in question, and that the building the VA suspected him of owning, in fact, was public housing, and it was actually owned by the Lorraine Metropolitan Housing Authority. Eventually, Mr. Skinner's pension was restored, and he got retroactive payments for the months that he was cut off. I have no patience for giving up when times are tough, because people like William Skinner are going to continue to need our help. I have no patience for giving up, because people like Lou Stokes fought harder and longer and against greater odds than I ever will. And you can ask Dick Pogue. I'm sure he'll tell you firsthand that Lou would have no patience for anybody who talked about giving up. Now, that's what motivated me every day as your U.S. attorney, whether it was dealing with national security threats or the foreclosure crisis or the police community lapse in trust or the heroin epidemic or the heartbreaking scourge of human trafficking. And that same feeling is what drives each and every legal aid attorney when they come into work. You know, etched in stone in the courthouse where I worked as your U.S. attorney for 7 years is a quote from Dr. King. It says, "A threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Now, more than ever, we really need to hear those words. It doesn't matter if the threat is just 3 miles away or 300 miles away. If justice is jeopardized in any one of those places, justice is jeopardized in our country, in our community, in our courthouse, and right here in this room. And so it's on all of us here in this room to pitch in and fight for justice, not just with words, but to fight by acting. Let's start by doing more to support legal aid. Your generosity can change lives. It can rescue families. It can help shape our city and our region. We are so grateful for Mr. Pogue's generous $25,000 matching pledge today. And let's get to that number before we leave here today. Get out your smartphones, that's the way you do it, and donate now, right now. I mean right now. Go ahead, get them out. And remember, you go online to lasclev.org, and I'm going to start right now by handing my own check to Colleen. Now, if that's not an easy way to get a cheap applause line, I don't know what is. But don't stop there. Don't stop with giving money. Give your time and your energy. Volunteer at a brief advice clinic. Take a pro bono case. Do something, anything, to help the Legal Aid Society fulfill their critical mission as a safety net for the most vulnerable and disenfranchised in Ohio. Allie and David, we're Americans, we're Ohioans, and we're Clevelanders. And when the storm comes across that lake, we don't turn tail and run. When the storm comes, we get in the damn boat and we row. We row hard. We row together, and we row towards a goal of a better day, better weather, better times, and justice. Everyone, not just some, every single person together. I'm humbled and inspired by this award. I'm moved to action, as you should be too, by those who came before me and those who now sit before me. And I promise to do my best to keep fighting for justice and to never give up. And I know you won't either. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for our annual meeting. We appreciate your support. Enjoy your afternoon.